So Thursday Night Football was actually pretty exciting and almost down to the wire, but the Dolphins might find themselves hitting the reset button sooner rather than later. Then there's been some very unfortunate injuries around the league, but one team in the NFC South, as well as another in the North, to be honest, is really going through it. Well, in today's video, I'll break those situations down, look at intriguing matchups and storylines heading into Week 3 of the NFL season, and more right after. Alright, so the Buffalo Bills took care of business against the Miami Dolphins last night, but we're not really surprised. They ended up winning 31-21 in a game that was surprisingly close, sort of. The Dolphins did have a chance to at least tie it up and maybe take it to overtime. They were down by 7 late in the fourth, but were driving down the field into Bills territory. But for the second week in a row with the game on the line, Tua threw a costly interception right to a linebacker, which sealed the deal. To be fair, Bernard made a great play on the ball, but last week Tua also threw a pick to a linebacker with less than 3 minutes to go, though it was on fourth down. Either way, Tua is struggling to seal the deal in crucial situations. So with that, the Dolphins fall to 0-3 for the first time since 2019. Next up, their schedule is the Jets, which means they'll be playing 3 divisional games in a row if you go back to week 2. Mike McDaniel's job is already on the line. He's 3-14 against winning teams now, by the way. But if they start the season 0-4 with 3 losses to divisional opponents, they might pull the plug on this man sooner rather than later. For the Bills, they're flying high at 3-0 and have scored 30 or more points in all 3 games this year. Josh Allen is now 14-2 in his career against the Dolphins with 43 touchdown passes in those 16 games. Allen also became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 300 touchdowns, doing it in his 127th game, just beating Mahomes, who got there in his 128th career game. Then, this is pretty crazy, but the Dolphins hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher in a game in 35 games coming into last night, but James Cook put that streak to rest with 108 yards on the ground to go along with the touchdown. Next up, here's some games to watch out for along with some storylines heading into week 3. The Eagles are hosting the Rams in a little playoff rematch. If you remember, LA came pretty close to taking them down on their home field during the divisional round last year, but Saquon went nuts, rushing for over 200 yards, which was the second time he did that against the Rams that year. When they met in the regular season, Saquon rushed for 255 yards, so look for them to feed him once again, especially with how often the Rams front has been generating pressure against QBs this year. Jared Verse had 4 pressures and 2 sacks the last time these teams met, and he's going to need to have a big game in order for the Rams to have a shot in this one. Both teams are coming in at 2-0, but my money is on the Eagles to take care of business at home if they can get that offense moving a little more effectively than they have the first 2 weeks. And before I get into the rest of these games, speaking of Saquon Barkley, I want to go over 3 of my favorite picks for some of these Week 3 matchups on Underdog, the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. I'm going to hit the higher on Saquon's 85.5 rushing yards. He's due for a big game after combining for less than 150 yards through the first 2 weeks. Plus, the Eagles played the Rams twice last year, and in both of those games, Saquon topped 200 yards, 460 total. So yeah, I like that. And I also like Jared Goff's higher on 229.5 passing yards against the Ravens. Goff is coming off a 300-yard outing in which the offense put up over 50 points. It was against the Bears, I know, but I'm expecting this game against Baltimore to feel like that Bills-Ravens game in week 1, an absolute shootout. There's another passer I'm high on, and that's Indiana Jones. This isn't your dad's Danny Dimes. This is a whole new man that is second in passing yards and first in yards per attempt right now. I'm taking him to go higher than 199.5 passing yards against the Titans, who gave up nearly 300 yards through the air to Matt Stafford last week. And if these 3 picks hit, you can win up to 3.53x on your money, but you can also just choose higher or lower on any of your favorite players' stats to win up to 1,000x. So make sure to tail these if you like them. And then any new signups who uses my code CBTH can play just $5 and get $50 in bonus funds plus a gimme pick in the lobby. All right, next up, the Chargers and Broncos should be an entertaining matchup, especially if you are as interested in the AFC West as I am. The Chargers have looked the better team in the division through 2 weeks, but I'm a little concerned about this matchup for them, and here's why. Khalil Mack is out for this game and at least the next 3 after after that since he recently got placed on IR with the elbow injury. That's obviously their top pass rusher, which doesn't bode well against this Broncos O-line that's allowed pressure on just 16% of Bo Nix's dropbacks this year. That's almost 5% lower than the next closest team. However, when he is pressured, Bo is just 4 of 11 for 21 yards and 2 picks. But I just don't know if they're going to be able to get home enough, which means Denver's receivers could eat in this one. Justin Herbert is more than capable of putting the offense on his back, though, and the trio of Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston has been rolling to start the season. This may turn into a borderline shootout, and it could look a bit like their last meeting in 2024 when the Chargers won 34-27. Another division rivalry game to keep an eye on is the 49ers against the Cardinals. Both teams are 2-0, so this game could go a long way towards winning the division. I know it's early still, but you only get 6 division games a year, and you got to make the most of them. I know you guys know that, just stating the obvious here, but the Cardinals swept the season series last year. It's just hard to take much away from that Week 18 game as both teams were already eliminated from the playoffs, and Brock Purdy wasn't even playing. Well, he may not be playing again in this one either with that turf toe injury. Purdy said he's day-to-day right now, and he's going to see how he feels on Sunday before determining whether or not he plays. So it sounds like he's a game-time decision, and if he doesn't go, it'll be Mac Jones once again, who played well for the most part last week, throwing for over 300 yards, or nearly 300 yards rather, and 3 touchdowns, but it was again a win against the Saints. The Cardinals, meanwhile, nearly blew a 24-point lead to the Panthers, and this is really their first big test of the season because they played New Orleans in Week 1. I am going to take Arizona in this one if Purdy can't go, but if he does, that could tip things in the 49ers' favor, though again, Mac Jones didn't really look that bad last week. And then for the primetime games, the Chiefs are heading to New York to play the Giants on Sunday Night Football. 2 0-2 teams. Who would have guessed it? And if you want to hear my full thoughts on that game, you can check out my preview video that I dropped today on my main channel. How about those Chiefs? In short, I have the Chiefs winning this one 27-17, but who knows? It could be a very close, stressful, down-to-the-wire, last-minute win for the Chiefs, per the course of this team over the last year or so. The Monday night game, though, is going to be a freaking banger. One of the most exciting matchups of the year so far. It's Ravens-Lions in Baltimore, the number 1 offense through 2 weeks, taking on the number 3 offense. The Ravens have put up 40 points in both games so far, which is pretty crazy. Meanwhile, Detroit exploded for 52 against Chicago last Sunday. It sounds simple, but it's really going to come down to which defense can actually get some stops here. Turnovers are going to be a big factor, like how Derrick Henry's fumble cost them the game against the Bills Week 1. This game could be another high-scoring affair just like that one. Will there be over 80 combined points? Probably not, but who really knows? The Ravens are 22-3 in primetime games under John Harbaugh, and they've won 5 in a row on Monday Night Football, so maybe it's 6 here soon. Then in a bit of injury news, Jayden Daniels has been ruled out of Sunday's game against the Raiders with a knee sprain. The injury occurred during Thursday Night Football, so a little over a week ago. It's not believed to be a long-term issue. The team seems to be on the cautious side of things with him as it's still just very early in the season, and well, he is their franchise quarterback, so they're going to need him down the stretch. For the time being, Marcus Mariota will fill in as the backup and take on his former team in the Raiders, who he played with as a backup in 2020 and 2021. Mariota made a couple of appearances last season and played really well, to be honest. In the 2 games he got real reps in, he was a combined 33 of 41 for over 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. That's really all you can ask out of a backup quarterback, so we'll see how he fares against the Raiders on Sunday. Then the Titans will be without their starting right tackle J.C. Latham, who's dealing with a hip injury. It's not ideal, but the Colts have just 3 sacks across 2 games, tied for the 4th fewest in the league, so they may be able to fend off that pass rush even without Latham in there. Speaking of O-line injuries, things are looking rough, to say the least, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their left tackle, Tristan Wirfs, he's not quite ready to play and hasn't yet this season. Then they just lost their guard, Cody Mock, for the season with a knee injury sustained on Monday Night Football. And then they just placed their right tackle, Luke Gedeke, on IR with a foot injury, so he will miss at least the next 4 games. That's also not even to mention that wide receiver Emeka Egbuka is questionable to play with a groin hip injury. So yeah, this is not ideal for the Bucs, though thankfully they have the Jets coming up next, so they might be able to get through that one with a W, even with all the injuries. The Bengals will most likely be without their top cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt this week against the Vikings, as he's listed as doubtful with a hamstring injury. That game is one I'm intrigued by, but probably not going to watch, as both J.J. McCarthy and Joe Burrow are out, which means it's going to be Carson Wentz against Jake Browning. I think I would rather watch paint dry. Minnesota will also be without their starting center Ryan Kelly, who had a concussion last week, but their starting left tackle Christian Darrisaw could maybe finally make his season debut, as he's been recovering from an ACL tear. Darrisaw said he's 50-50 on whether he'll play this Sunday, so we'll see. There's no question they need him badly, though, after they gave up 6 sacks last week to Atlanta. The Chicago Bears are another team that's going through injury hell. Their star cornerback Jalen Johnson is likely missing the rest of the year with a groin injury. Then they have 2 other defensive backs already ruled out, Kyler Gordon and Jalen Jones. Linebacker TJ Edwards is also out with a hamstring injury, so the defense that just gave up 52 points is now playing against a team that scored 40, and they'll be doing so without several key players on defense. Not ideal. The Cowboys will be without cornerback Deron Bland for the second week in a row after he injured his foot during practice, and they aren't looking all that great on defense either, so this may be another game that ends in a shootout, as both teams are down their top corners and just allowed a ton of points last week. Another injury to monitor is with Packers tight end Tucker Kraft. Apparently, he injured his knee during yesterday's practice. Thankfully, it sounds like he avoided anything serious. However, it's worth noting that Matt LaFleur told the media he didn't think Kraft needed to go to IR, but that he was uncertain of his status for their game on Sunday. Well, the fact that he even mentioned IR means that he's probably going to miss at least a couple of games. It's a bummer too, because Kraft has been one of the best tight ends in the league through 2 weeks with 140 yards and 2 touchdowns so far. But hey, make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on some of these games. Which ones are you looking forward to the most? And are there going to be any upsets week 3 of the 2025 NFL season? If so, who is it going to be and why? Anyway, with that, I'll see y'all next time.